Think about a voice so raw and powerful it could make the hardest heartache, a sound that captured the sweat and soul of the American South. On a foggy December day in 1967, that voice went silent forever, leaving behind a legacy of songs that still whisper truths about love, loss, and longing. Otis Redding wasn't just a singer. He was the heartbeat of soul music, gone at 26, right as the world was starting to truly hear him. Stick with me as we walk through his too short life, the triumphs that lifted him high, and the tragedy that cut it all short. This is the story of a man whose music felt like a conversation with your own hidden pains. The American South in the 1940s and 1950s was a place of deep divides, where the echoes of the Great Depression lingered alongside the rising tide of the Civil Rights Movement. Jim Crow laws enforced segregation, limiting where black families could live, work, or even dream. In small towns like Dawson, Georgia, sharecropping was a common grind, and families scraped by on faith and hard labor. Gospel music poured out of churches, blending with the blues from juke joints, creating a soundtrack of resilience amid hardship. Radio stations broadcast Sam Cooke's smooth croons and Little Richard's wild energy, inspiring kids to see music as a way out. For Otis Redding, born into this world on September 9th, 1941, these sounds were more than entertainment, they were a lifeline. His father, Otis Sr., worked as a sharecropper before taking a job at Robins Air Force Base and preaching on weekends, instilling a sense of discipline and spirituality. His mother, Fanny, held the family together through moves and money troubles. When Otis was 3, they settled in Macon's Tyndall Heights housing project, a cramped but vibrant black community where kids learned early about survival. Otis sang in the Vineville Baptist Church choir from a young age, his voice already carrying that distinctive rasp, influenced by the preacher's calls and the radio hits sneaking in late at night. School was a struggle. At Ballard Hudson High, he joined the band, but dropped out at 15 when his father's tuberculosis left him hospitalized and the family in dire need. Otis took odd jobs, digging wells, pumping gas, to keep food on the table, but music called louder, offering a spark of joy in the daily grind. Otis Redding's entry into the music world kicked off in earnest when he was just 17, diving headfirst into the vibrant but competitive scene of Macon, Georgia. He started performing at local talent shows hosted by DJ Hamp Swain on WIBB Radio, a station that pulsed with the energy of rhythm and blues for the black community. These contests, known as the Teenage Party, were held at venues like the Roxy and Douglas theaters, where young hopefuls vied for attention. Otis didn't just participate, he dominated, winning the competition an astonishing 15 weeks straight. Each victory came from his electrifying covers of Little Richard's hits, like Heebie Jeebies, earning him $5 per win, which felt like a windfall for a teenager from the tough Tyndall Heights projects. This streak wasn't just about the money, it built his confidence and caught the eye of local musicians. Little Richard, a fellow Macon native whose wild piano-pounding style had already exploded onto the national scene, became Otis's ultimate idol. Otis often credited him later, saying he would not be here without Richard's influence, even mimicking his signature pompadour hairstyle and high-octane performance energy that blended gospel fervor with rock and roll rebellion. That same year, buoyed by his talent show success, Otis joined guitarist Johnny Jenkins's band, the Pine Toppers. He served double duty as both singer and driver, hitting the road across the southern states on the Chitlin Circuit, a gritty network of black-owned clubs, theaters, and halls where segregation forced performers into a separate world from white audiences. The gigs were far from glamorous. Endless drives in beat-up vehicles, meager pay that barely covered gas and food, and crowds that could be unforgiving if the energy dipped. But for Otis, it was a crucible, honing his raw vocal power and stage presence amid the smoke-filled rooms and pulsating rhythms of the segregated South. As Otis settled into the Pine Toppers, he quickly outgrew the backup role. He briefly took the lead as frontman for Patty Cake and the Mighty Panthers, another local outfit that included Jenkins on guitar. This group allowed him to experiment more with his style, blending the soulful cries he'd learned in church with the upbeat R&B that dominated the airwaves. But a bigger opportunity came when he got a break joining Little Richard's backing band, the Upsetters. This happened after Richard temporarily stepped away from secular music to focus on gospel, leaving his band in need of a dynamic vocalist. Otis stepped in, earning a solid $25 per gig, a step up that helped support his family during tough times. The Upsetters tours deepened his exposure to the Chitlin Circuit's demands, where performers had to deliver night after night to rowdy, discerning crowds. These experiences taught him resilience. He'd later reflect on how the circuit's hardships built his relentless drive, turning potential setbacks into fuel for his emotive delivery. Though his time with the Upsetters was short, it solidified his reputation as a singer who could channel raw emotion, drawing from personal struggles like his father's illness and the family's financial woes. This period also highlighted the era's racial barriers, separate accommodations, constant travel risks, and the ever-present shadow of Jim Crow laws that made every tour a test of endurance. By mid-1960, Otis felt the pull of bigger horizons and moved to Los Angeles with his sister Deborah, leaving his family behind in Macon to chase the promise of Hollywood's music scene. This bold step was driven by a hunger to break beyond the South's limitations, where opportunities for Black artists were stifled by segregation. In LA, he linked up with collaborators and recorded his first singles, starting with raw, energetic tracks like She's All Right and Shout, Bamalama. These were co-written with James McEachin and released under small labels like Confederate Records, where he also cut I'm Gettin' Hip and Gamalama, later reissued as Shout Bamalama, with his makeshift band, Otis and the Shooters. The songs hinted at his emerging emotional depth, gritty shouts mixed with vulnerable undertones, but they didn't chart, facing stiff competition from established acts. The LA stint was a mix of excitement and hardship. Otis navigated a new city far from home, dealing with the isolation of being an unknown in a bustling industry. He returned to Georgia by 1961, where personal life took center stage. That year, after the birth of his son Dexter in the summer of 1960, he married his girlfriend Zelma Atwood, whom he'd met at one of those teenage party events when she was 17 and he 18. Settling into family life amid the ongoing hustle, Otis balanced diaper changes and odd jobs with his music ambitions, his marriage providing a stable anchor in an otherwise unpredictable world. Zelma's support was crucial, as she managed the home front while he pursued gigs, embodying the quiet sacrifices that underpinned his rise. The pivotal moment arrived in 1962 during a routine drive to Memphis for Johnny Jenkins's audition at Stax Records. When Jenkins' session fizzled out with time left on the clock, Otis seized the chance, begging the studio team to let him sing. He poured his heart into These Arms of Mine, a poignant ballad he'd written about deep-seated longing and separation, accompanied by Jenkins on guitar and Steve Cropper on piano. Stax co-founder Jim Stewart was captivated, recalling how everybody was fixing to go home, but Joe Galkin insisted we give Otis a listen. There was something different about the ballad. He really poured his soul into it. Signed on the spot by Volt, Stax's subsidiary, the single dropped in October 1962 and climbed to number 20 on the R&B charts by 1963, selling over 800,000 copies. This launched his Stax era, where his rough, gospel-tinged voice contrasted sharply with Motown's sleek polish, carving out a niche in soul music. Additional sessions yielded tracks like Hey Hey Baby, That's What My Heart Needs, and Mary's Little Lamb, his lowest-selling single, all infused with the raw authenticity that would define him. Touring remained brutal, with segregation dictating separate hotels and venues, forcing Otis back to the Chitlin circuit to cultivate his fan base. In November 1963, he performed at New York's Apollo Theater for a live album on Atlantic Records, sharing the bill with legends like Benny King and Rufus Thomas. Paid $400 weekly, but hit with unexpected costs, like $450 for sheet music. He faced cash shortages until King loaned him $100 upon hearing of his plight, a gesture that underscored the camaraderie among black artists in a discriminatory industry. With momentum building, Otis released his debut album, Pain in My Heart, in March 1964. It blended originals like the title track, which reached number 1, 11 on R&B, and number 61 on the Hot 100, with covers peaking at number 103 on the Billboard 200. However, the album stirred controversy over similarities to Irma Thomas's Ruler of My Heart, highlighting early copyright challenges in the soul genre. The record captured his evolving style, heartfelt pleas, rooted in personal experiences, delivered with a rasp that conveyed pain and passion. Touring intensified, navigating the South's racial tensions, where every performance was a battle against exhaustion and prejudice. These years revealed Otis's work ethic. He arranged his own songs and played guitar in sessions, showcasing a multifaceted talent that went beyond singing. His energy in the studio became legendary, setting the stage for greater heights. 1965 marked a prolific surge. In March, Otis dropped the great Otis Redding Sing Soul Ballads, featuring Mr. Pitiful, a nickname coined by DJ A.C. Muha Williams for his sorrowful delivery, and tracks like Chained and Bound, Come to Me, and That's How Strong My Love Is. He co-wrote the timeless I've Been Loving You Too Long with Jerry Butler, a slow, aching plea that became a cornerstone of his repertoire, reflecting themes of enduring love amid hardship. By September, Otis Blue, Otis Redding Sing Soul arrived, recorded astonishingly in just 24 hours on July 9th to 10th, with 2 tracks done earlier. The album included his rendition of Respect, later immortalized by Aretha Franklin, and a stirring cover of Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come, linking his music to the civil rights movement's hopes and struggles. Critically acclaimed, it showcased his versatility, melding tender ballads with upbeat grooves, while his gospel-infused voice stood out in an era of polished sounds. This period deepened his emotional realism, drawing from private pains like family separations during tours, turning them into universal anthems that connected deeply with listeners. By 1966, Otis was crossing over. He played the Whiskey A Go-Go in L.A., wowing white audiences with his sweat-drenched energy. Bob Dylan sent him a version of Just Like a Woman, but Otis passed, saying it was too wordy. Complete and unbelievable, the Otis Redding Dictionary of Soul included Try a Little Tenderness, starting soft and building to a frenzy, hitting number 1, 25 on pop charts. He toured Europe, earning rave reviews and made $800 to $1,000 per night back home. In 1967, he released King and Queen with Carla Thomas, a gold-certified duet album. He produced Arthur Conley's sweet soul music, shouting out soul legends in the lyrics. June's Monterey Pop Festival was his breakthrough. Backed by Booker T and the MGs, he electrified the hippie crowd with high-kicking passion, declaring, "This is the love crowd, right? We all love each other, don't we?" Throat polyps sidelined him in September. During a recovery, he wrote 30 songs. He started his label, Otis, to gain control. On December 6th, he recorded Sittin On, the Dock of the Bay, with Steve Cropper whistling The Unfinished Bridge, a folk-tinged reflection on loneliness. 4 days later, en route to Madison, Wisconsin, his Beechcraft H-18 plane crashed into Lake Monona amid fog and engine trouble. Otis, his manager, pilot, and 4 Bar-Kays members died. Trumpeter Ben Cauley survived, clinging to a seat cushion. Rarely discussed is the eerie detail. Otis had bought the plane recently, ignoring warnings about its history, and the crash site yielded a suitcase of cash from gigs, which mysteriously vanished amid recovery efforts. Posthumously, Dock of the Bay topped charts, his first number one. Otis's life brimmed with quiet moments that revealed his depth. Growing up, he loved horses as much as singing. He owned a 400-acre ranch in Macon, raising cattle and hogs, and hunted on horseback to unwind from the road's chaos. "I like to hunt on horseback," he once said, showing a side grounded in rural simplicity amid fame's glare. His marriage to Zelma was an anchor. They met at a teen party when he was 18, she 17, and despite early poverty, they built a family. Dexter arrived in 1960, followed by Otis III and Carla, with Zelma adopting Demetria later. Otis doted on his kids, but touring strained things. He was often absent, sending money home but missing milestones. In Jonathan Gould's biography, Otis Redding, an unfinished life, Zelma recalled enduring his infidelities during endless tours, yet she stayed managing his estate after his death and raising their children with fierce protectiveness. One emotional anecdote: days before the crash, Otis called Zelma from Cleveland, sounding weary but excited about new songs. "I'm coming home soon," he promised, but never made it. Ben Cauley, the crash survivor, shared haunting memories. The plane bucked in turbulence. Otis sat calmly reading, then a sharp bank and impact. Cauley heard Otis's voice one last time before the water claimed him. Otis's inner world was one of contrasts. His onstage fury hid a gentle humor. He nicknamed himself Mr. Pitiful, ironically, but lyrics like "Old Man Trouble" revealed real vulnerabilities, drawing from personal heartaches. Friends remembered his generosity. He lent money to struggling musicians, quietly supporting Macon's Black community. Yet he feared failure. Dropping out young left him insecure about education, pushing him to prove himself through music. A striking lesser-heard quote from an archived interview: "Everything I sing comes from my life, the joys, the pains. If it don't hurt a little, it ain't real." This honesty made his ballads feel like confessions, connecting listeners to their own unspoken sorrows. His joy shone in family gatherings at the ranch, where he'd sing gospel with relatives, reminding everyone of his church roots. Post-crash, Zelma found unfinished lyrics in his things, fragments of dreams cut short, underscoring the fragile line between creation and loss. The December 10th, 1967 plane crash etched indelible scars, vividly recounted by sole survivor Ben Cauley, the Bar-Kays trumpeter. Seated behind Otis in the co-pilot spot on the twin-engine Beechcraft, Cauley had fallen asleep clutching a seat cushion during the foggy flight to Madison, Wisconsin. He awoke to turbulence, hearing bandmate Phelan Jones cry, "Oh no," as the plane banked sharply and plunged into Lake Monona's icy waters. Unbuckling his belt, Cauley separated from the wreckage, clinging to the cushion for about 20 minutes in freezing conditions. He couldn't swim and heard his friends' desperate cries for help before silence fell. Rescuers pulled him out, but Otis and others remained strapped in their seats, their bodies recovered over days. Cawley, who survived a 1989 stroke and continued performing until his 2015 death, often spoke of nightmares where he relived the screams, finding solace in the music they created together. These haunting details reveal the crash's emotional toll, a stark reminder of life's sudden fragility. In the aftermath, Zelma's discoveries among Otis's belongings deepened the sense of loss and unfinished dreams. She found fragments of unfinished lyrics, including the whistled bridge in Dock of the Bay, a spontaneous choice when he forgot planned lines, adding a raw personal touch to his final recording. These scraps symbolize the abrupt end to his creative surge, where he'd penned 30 songs during recovery, blending hope with melancholy. Zelma managed his estate with protectiveness, raising the children and preserving his legacy through ventures like nightclubs and a janitorial service. The emotional impact lingered. Otis III's death in 2023 echoed the family's ongoing resilience. These elements highlight the fragile line between creation and loss, where private pains and joys intertwined, leaving a profound human insight into Otis's world. Otis's story isn't without its shadows, inviting thoughtful debates about the man behind the myth. His infidelities, detailed in Gould's book, paint a picture of a flawed husband strained by fame's temptations. Zelma endured affairs on the road, where groupies and isolation tested loyalties, contradicting the devoted family man image in his songs. Some historians question if this hypocrisy diminished his messages of love and respect. After all, he wrote respect as a plea from a working man to his wife, yet lived oppositely at times. There's debate over his business moves. Starting Jotis was ambitious, but critics argue he exploited young talent like the Barkays, pushing them hard without fair cuts. The plane crash sparked controversies too. Why did he fly in bad weather? Some blame pilot error or poor maintenance on the second-hand Beechcraft, while others point to Otis's impatience to gig, ignoring risks. Eyewitnesses describe the plane's uneven wings before impact, fueling theories of mechanical failure versus fate. Broader discussions rethink his legacy. Was he Soul's king, or did his short career overinflate his status compared to longer-lived peers like James Brown? His music avoided overt politics, focusing on personal emotions during civil rights turmoil, leading some to debate if he could have evolved into a more activist voice. Respectfully, these layers show Otis as human, gifted yet imperfect, his contradictions mirroring the era's struggles. History remains open. Recent biographies like Gould's uncover more, suggesting his unfinished life invites ongoing reflection on fame's costs. Otis Redding's story echoes through time, influencing music and culture in ways that highlight resilience amid tragedy. His death shocked the industry, coming just as soul was bridging racial divides. Monterey Pop had introduced him to white audiences, paving the way for genre crossovers. Posthumously, Dock of the Bay became the first #1 by a deceased artist since 1940, blending R&B with folk and selling millions, inspiring artists to experiment. 3 albums released after his passing, like The Dock of the Bay, 1968, kept his voice alive, earning Grammys and Hall of Fame inductions. Culturally, he shaped hip-hop. Samples in Jay-Z and Kanye West's Otis, 2011, won a Grammy, linking generations. Politically, songs like A Change Is Gonna Come subtly supported civil rights, offering hope during marches. Today, his ranch is a museum in Macon, preserving his story for fans, grappling with loss in their lives. We learn from Otis the value of authenticity. His raw emotion teaches vulnerability as strength, urging us to express pains before they're silenced. In a world of fleeting fame, he matters because his music reminds us life's fragility amplifies its beauty, encouraging empathy across divides. Otis Redding's journey reminds us that true greatness often comes wrapped in unfinished dreams, where passion outlives the body. His voice, full of hurt and hope, urges us to cherish connections and face flaws with grace. In his short blaze, we find a lasting light, proof that even in tragedy, the soul endures.